I'm Gold Derby editor Daniel Montgomery here with Anika Noni Rose, who co-stars in Maid as Regina, a wealthy lawyer whose life intersects with the struggling title character Alex. Now we see Regina through Alex's point of view, so it takes a while for us to get to know her under the surface. Did you know what your character arc would be when you signed up for the series, like the whole way the series progresses?
No, because they were writing as we were going. I did have a great conversation with Molly Smith Metzler before I signed on because it's really important for me that a character be whole. And she assured me that this was someone who we were going to see in depth and in a thorough fashion, because I didn't just want to be on and just be have to play one note throughout the series. So I was really glad to hear that. But there were a lot of things that I didn't know, and I didn't know the specifics of, that were shocking as I got the scripts, but pleasantly so.
And how does that affect, your performance as you're playing the character throughout the series and getting to know her?
Well, I think it definitely keeps you on your toes, and we had conversations about things. So nothing came that was out of character for the person, but I got to really have a Regina that grew and became a person as opposed to an archetype of rich bitch, if we can say that here. So so I was really pleased about that. But it's so rare that we see Black women in the higher echelons of society in general. To see one who is highly moneyed, very privileged, and to only have her live in one space would have been really disappointing and unfortunate and a missed opportunity. So I was really glad that every script that I got, something different was happening with her. And I think that very true to someone who is going through the things that she's going through, and then also has a new baby on top of all the other things that she's going through. Of course, every day would be different. Of course, you're going to see something else from her emotionally because her emotions are doing this all the time. So I was really grateful for that.
And one of the early moments where we do really get to know Regina in depth comes, at the Thanksgiving episode where Regina has gotten some bad news about her marriage, and she basically just confesses all of this to Alex. What were your reactions to reading that scene and what you learned about Regina and the opportunity to get to play it?
Well, that was all backstory that I hadn't known. So when I got the script, it was a big, oh, this sounds so corny, but it was really a big wow to me. I was like, okay, this we can get into. This is somebody who has lived a life that no one can imagine, who has gone through things that would explain a lot to people. And there are so many women dealing with the issues that Regina was dealing with that never talk about it because of the shame wrapped around infertility, because of the fear of feeling, I guess, less than, being made to feel less than as a woman, as a mother, because this is a woman who was supposed to have everything, and she almost did. She almost did. So when I read the script, I was like, well, this is a meal. This is a full course meal. And this is something that I can really dig into and make sense of and hopefully make very real, and speak for so many women and speak to so many women. I really felt like the episode itself was a gift.
And being a theater performer, I'm sure that kind of wealth of dialogue is nothing new for you. How did you prepare for that scene going into it? Like, what was just getting into that emotional mindset of where your character is at that point?
I think what was important to me, and what is most often important to me, is to allow the words to live and allow the words to breathe and allow the words to exist. I didn't want to truncate any of that. I didn't want to put too much weight on it because the situation that I was speaking of was weighty enough. I wanted it to be as honest as it possibly could be without putting butter on it, if that makes any sense at all. So what I did was I'm I learned it so that I knew that I could be word for word, but not, if this makes sense to somebody, but not so that it was rote, because I didn't want anything coming out of my mouth to be expected. So I learned it just enough so that each word will be coming from a place of thought and experience, thought and feeling, um, so that I knew what I was going to say, but I could still, or would still, in some places, but not planned places, look for what I was going to say. And there are, of course, some things that I wanted to allow to land and have more weight than other places. But what I really wanted it to do was to be able to move through my body and to allow my body to experience, when speaking those words, that hurt and that freshness of it, um, as if those words were coming newly formed. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Oh yeah, it does. It does, absolutely. Like whenever you're getting, a huge piece of dialogue, you always want it to seem like you never want it to seem like you're reading a script. You want it to seem like
no,
this is coming up organically.
no. And I feel like writers write things purposefully. Writers put words there purposefully, and you know that. So unless something is simply not working in my mouth, or we can find a way to make something, to better something together, I want to honor those words. Um, but I never want to wring the words dry in my body, because I really want the newness of thought to be able to continue to live. And I felt like it was such an emotional piece of writing, that it was also important to me not to be entrenched in the emotion of it. Because I think that something, when this woman is talking about trying over and over to have a child, and losing every time, physically and emotionally, I felt like if I allowed myself to be entrenched in the wet emotion of it, that something will be lost and you can't get up. You know what I mean? Like, how do you get up from that? There's no way to move if you're starting down in here. So it was important to me to find and allow to live those highs and those lows within the speech, and to when emotion couldn't be held back, that's when emotion was allowed to play, in a visible or wet way, if that makes sense.
And your work in that scene with Margaret Qualley, who the lion's share of your work in the series is with. What was it like working with her? Playing these two characters who are coming into each other's lives at from such very different places.
Well, it was fun because I was such a little nasty piece of work, and and she was so wide-eyed and like just taking everything in as it came, but also being like, what is this person that I'm looking at? So it was really fun to be able to bounce off of that and, shock somebody with the level of, oh, I don't know, callousness, that was reached in many of those places, but also to know that in the end, we were going to come together and meet at our hearts, that we were going to see each other as women, and we were going to understand um, where we could lift each other. Because for Regina to be able to basically strip her bare with a look and a word, can you read? Should I read it to you? And then really see who this person is after allowing herself to be really seen. That's where we get humanity meeting and blooming. And I thought, how great to be able to show that, Regina has a heart, and it's a big heart. And she sees this young woman and she recognizes despair. And she also has a set of skills that are specific and can assist her in bringing her out of the space that she is and wants to. So I think that to have them develop a friendship, which is sort of strong friendship, because, I was still a boss. That's hard, it's a difficult place. But to develop an amiable relationship and a relationship of understanding and of care and recognition and mutual lifting, I thought that was a beautiful place to end up. And we got to see these characters at the root of who they were and meet there. So it was lovely to be able to do that with Margaret, because she was so wide-eyed and open for whatever I was giving her, that we really got to hear each other and to feel each other within that space, which for women on screen is, sort of rare. We actually both spoke more than 5 words. We got to be complex beings. We got to support each other. It was a wonderful thing.
Yeah, Maid definitely passes the Bechdel test. Yeah. And one of the things, you mentioned how Regina kind of they have that meeting of person to person, and that's one of the things that's so impactful about Maid is that Alex's position is so precarious that every act of kindness really stands out in the story, and so like. What do you think about that sort of theme that the show explores about how really just this kind of empathy and kindness can open so many doors when someone is struggling in a position like that and needs someone to help them at a crucial moment?
Well, I think it's deeply necessary. What more crucial moment have we been in this lifetime than the one that we are in now? Very similar to the AIDS crisis. We are in a crisis. We are in a crisis as human beings. We are in a crisis across the world. And if we do not find a space of empathy, we will all suffer while we think that another person, another country, another culture is less important than this one or that one or the other. Air rises. We're all going to suffer if we don't take care of the people that we consider to be beneath us. And that doesn't mean, giving up all your earthly goods and, becoming a monk. And it just means recognizing that other people exist and other people matter. It just means taking a second when you look at someone who is in peril, in sadness, in trouble, in need, and deciding, is there something I can do in this moment? It's not always a big thing. Sometimes it's, oh, you have leftovers from that restaurant that gave you so much food that you couldn't eat. Do you need to take it home? Or can you hand it to that person there who's not going home? There are so many things that we can do. And I think that we are at we are at a real crossroads, and the lack of empathy is literally killing us as we see um, a new strain of COVID across the world. The lack of empathy is actually killing us. So maybe it's something that we should be paying attention to and not think of it as bleeding heart or labeling it as liberal, but thinking of it as humane, and then recognizing that 5 of those letters exist in what we actually are.
Yeah, and speaking of COVID and how it's had such an impact on the world, the theater community is finally getting back up and running. Broadway is back open. You of course have worked on Broadway a number of times. What are your thoughts about how that community is kind of getting its back on its feet? Carolina Change, for which you won your Tony. The revival is up now. So.
I'm so grateful because, I work across many mediums. There are some people for whom that is their only medium. That is the thing that they are here to do. They live in New York or somewhere else, and that is what they do, period. So when we think about not having a show, there are people for whom health insurance rests on whether or not they have a show. Their rent rests on whether or not they have a show. So it's not some frivolous high-end form of entertainment solely. It is somebody's life blood. It is the people who clean the theater, the people who do the lights, the people who do the costumes, not just the people on stage. There are lots of people you don't even see who have really, really been struggling the past few years. And I think that it'll be more clear to people what art means to them because of the time that art wasn't there in that live fashion, and because of the things that allowed folks not to lose their minds during the pandemic: television, film, radio. If not for these things, people literally would have lost their minds. So I hope that there's a greater respect for what it is that we do, and a greater recognition for the abilities of those who to do those things, and a knowledge of why it's important. It's also just thrilling. I mean, I've never been to New York, and I lived in New York for 15 years. I've never been in the city and had Broadway be dark for more than a day in celebration of some icon that passed away. It was eerie walking down the street and having it be silent. And I think there's been a great reckoning with the things that are necessary, the things that are wanted, the things that we're passionate for. And it'll never be quite the same, because we know things in a different way now. We know things from our heart now, in a different space. And I'm so happy for the friends of mine for whom that is their everyday job, that they are able to exist in a space of comfort and security. It's really important.
And speaking of Broadway legends, we lost Stephen Sondheim, of course. Passed away recently, and you performed in Lincoln Center production of Company. I was just wondering what your thoughts are on his career and his legacy, and what he left. The enormous body of work he left.
Well, it's a titan, isn't it? We lost a titan. I think the gift of Stephen Sondheim is that his words, his music, they're never going away. But they've also informed and inspired so many new great talents, because one thing that he was generous with his gift, which we are all lucky for, because he has left us so many people who were inspired by or mentored by him, specifically and intimately. So though we will miss him, we will still have him in many ways. I mean, how ironic that I got to sing Move On the Tonys with Ben Platt this year, and he has actually moved on, but the words in that song were so are so poignant, and we must seize every moment and live every moment and keep walking forward. And I think that that was the gift of his life. He definitely seized every moment, every note, and kept moving forward, kept growing, and kept fertilizing that around him so that the art will continue to grow even when he has actually moved on and passed on. He'll be greatly, greatly missed, not just on Broadway, but in anybody's ear who loved a musical or loved poetry and was moved by that depth of writing. And I'm really quite grateful that I was gifted the opportunity to sing his music and to be in his presence on more than one occasion.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your work in Maid, and just your continued multifaceted career as it continues. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Thank you for making the time. It was my pleasure.